I think self-awareness is the key to changing. Once you actually man up and you sort of wonder, you ask yourself, how am I causing the results that I want to avoid? Because many take it as taking blame or guilt or feeling less than. But when you take it with an objective approach and say, well, how could I possibly be contributing to the things that I'm looking to avoid? Arguments, going to bed angry, my wife not being passionate with me, whatever. That is the first rule. That's the first rule is to just be willing to be self-aware. And from then on, that's why the book opens on that, because there's no change if you don't accept that you want to change. Not that you need to change, but that you want to change, because you're not reaping the results that you're wanting to. That's funny, man.
Um, yeah. So, like I said, I'll let you introduce yourself and whatever you want to share. However you want to preface it, and then we can go into the conversation from there.
Sure.
So, I don't really do an intro. I don't do a welcome back. Hey, this is whatever. I just kind of let you guys take the floor, and then we'll dive in.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
All right. So, whenever you're ready.
I'm ready.
All right. So, who are you? What do you do?
My name is Victor Giusfredi, and I'm a writer. I'm an author and also a certified life and wellness and also neuro-linguistic programming coach.
Yeah, there's a lot going. That's a very brief introduction, but there's a lot involved in it.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, there's a lot packed in there. That's right.
what got you into the NLP stuff?
Mostly Tony Robbins,
Mm,
because I've always been obsessed with mindset and the techniques that make regular people stand apart from the rest. Since an early age, I wanted to play in a band. Then I competed in extreme sports. And as I try to get better at both of those things, and you start reading and you start educating yourself about the craft that you're partaking. The theme of mindset and what happens in your mind before you see that translated into results became obvious. That was confirmed by me later getting into sales and studying sales and realizing that the way that you think translates into certain ways that you do things, and that equals results. So um, by 20, even though I started this mindset journey when I was 18, um, by 2021 I had the chance to attend a Tony Robbins event. I'm not a fanboy or anything. I've done it mostly for my own research and exploratory purposes.
mhm.
And something that I realized in his event was that I went to unleash the power within, and something I realized, it's how he leverages heavily NLP and reprogramming certain things at the core, so then you're most likely to achieve sustainable change. And so that once I sort of figured out what it is that he does and how he does it, then it was clear to me that I needed to study neuro-linguistic programming to see what that really means to myself, and then just try it and test it out to see what works and what doesn't.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm a big fan of Tony Robbins, his content, and I've never really picked up on the NLP part of it. Like,
Yeah, yeah. It's well, because NLP, it's not much different than regular conversation, but what it is it stands for neuro linguistic programming, and it changes first the thought strategies in your mind, which
mm,
then translate into a different emotional states, and those emotional states translate into actions. And something that his programs are big on are helping you realize where it is that you're really stuck, right? Like people that are into self-development are in a place and they want to get into a different place, or they want to be better at whatever they do, right? Even if it's just life. And so a big part of that is understanding what it is that is blocking you. But the other part is finding a way to embrace that change and make it sustainable, because it's happened to me, but I'm sure it happens to a lot of people, that January 1st comes around and you want to lose some weight, or you put on some weight throughout the winter, which is normal, right? People overeat. We don't go out as much. So you put on a couple of pounds and you say, okay, well, January's around. I'm going to get in shape for the summer, whatever it is. And you get all fired up, and the first week you're on fire and you're doing P90X twice a day, and you're going running and doing keto, and you're like this beast. And then February comes around and you're burnt out, you don't care about that anymore, and then you sort of fall into your old habits unconsciously,
Mhm.
and get trapped again in that feedback loop, and people get frustrated and they don't understand why, or they say I don't have discipline, or I'm not good enough, or that's not my thing. But really, the problem here is it's finding what the root of that desire is, and neurolinguistic programming plays a big role into that, because once you sort of pinpoint which screw needs adjusting in your whole engine so the engine runs properly, then neurolinguistic programming comes in with certain techniques. And I'm saying not everything that I studied I found it to be true,
Mhm.
or at least worked for me, but there are certain things that really do work. And those are the things that I also devise that Tony Robbins uses the most. So swash patterns, such as changing the reframing things in your mind, so then you don't react the same way that you will react before, or using leverage for saying, okay, I want to achieve this goal, so I want to lose weight, right? But here are 10 reasons why I want to lose weight. Here are 10 positive things that I'm going to experience by losing weight, and here are 10 negative things that I'm going to experience or continue to experience if I don't, right? And
Mhm.
that's how you reprogram yourself. You're sort of giving yourself this new set of instructions, and telling yourself what it is that you want to do, why it is that you want to do it, and why it is you should do it, right? Not avoid it. And that sort of changes the root, and then becoming healthy, or getting fit, it's a different type of journey. It's not the sprint race that you just want to do before summer gets here. You actually understand that it's something that is for the rest of your life, and that you do it little by little, and you know what you're gonna get out of it if you do it, which is enticing, because we as humans need things to look forward to. I mean,
Mhm.
if you have a business, you look forward to making customers happy, to getting spreading word of mouth, of getting that recognition that you're good at what you're doing, and obviously the moolah, right? The money
Right.
and the freedom. So that's what neurolinguistic programming does. And it's not really something that it's obvious, right? It's not like a magic spell. It's like abracadabra, and then and suddenly that that's magic or whatever. It's just normal language, but that reprograms yourself at a neural level that later translates into the habits that you're looking to achieve. Does that make sense?
This episode is brought to you by Excel Coaching Academy. Hey guys, I'm really excited to let you know that I started a mindset coaching business. So, what I want to do with this business is I want to help entrepreneurs, business owners, salespeople, leaders, and fitness enthusiasts or athletes develop the right mindset to increase revenue, improve business or performance, and overcome the challenges needed to become the best version of themselves. You can get more information about this by emailing info@excelcoaching.academy. Yeah, yeah. So I read a book one time, and I forgot who wrote this book. It's like a purple cover, neurolinguistic programming. I
Mm,
can't remember who wrote the book, but anyway, um, yeah, it was like, and talking about Tony Robbins too. I think he talks a lot about identity, like seeing yourself as the person, or taking that identity on for yourself. You mentioned, and there's the word programming in NLP, and I think that's kind of interesting, because it's
yeah.
like I think we are programmed one way or the other, whether we realize it or not. I think there's a lot of I think everywhere we look, there's programming. Like, I mean, advertising is programming. You know what I mean? Like, social media is programming. A school system is programming. Like, there's
Yep.
programming that goes on everywhere. Um, so I think if we can take conscious control of what that programming is, or the results of that, I think that's like, well, that's obviously much better than being programmed by an outside source. But I think it's just the awareness of knowing that all those things are sort of happening.
100%. And truth is, I've done many podcasts, but man, nobody has said it as clearly as you just stated it. And um, that's right. Because if you go back to Pavlov, right? Pavlov, he used to study animals' digestive systems, and he during a study he was feeding dogs at certain intervals, and he started realizing that every time he will feed the dogs salivated.
Hmm.
And he sort of thought, and I'm assuming this by the research that I'm done, right? Who knows what he really thought. uh, he thought that the salivating was due to a feeding cue. So what he started doing is connecting that cue with the bell. And so every time he fed them, he rang the bell and the dog salivated. And eventually he stopped feeding them and he rang the bell, and the dogs will salivate as if they were going to get fed. And that's how classical conditioning was born, right? That's what classical conditioning is today, and that's used by everyone who's anybody in the world, because you're right. We are programmed from the moment that we're born, and not that we come programmed, but we start getting programmed by those around us, right? By the things that we do. Then we get feedback, whether positive or negative, or pleasurable or painful, and that unconsciously instills in us sort of an operating instruction to say, well, don't put your hand on the stove because you'll get burned. And as you go through life, we start generalizing, and that starts getting buried down in school. Yeah, school is a big indoctrination system, because they are. I got two kids, right? So one of the things that I wrestle with is finding a balance between the classical conditioning they receive in school and how I think the life is a bit more pleasurable and fuller to live, right? And so, for example, I counteract when they're trying to push for heavy grades. If they're pushing for grades, I tell them the grades are not important, that I don't care, and if in fact every time my daughter brings me 100, I just roll into a little roll of paper and a hair in the head, like kidding. I'm like, don't bring me any hundreds, right? So I'm doing that need for obedience and for uber performance, because that plays, at least in my case, has played a major negative role in breaking free from the matrix, if you will, right? And then achieving your goals. So you're right. But the problem is that you have to embrace that first. You have to, it sounds ooey wooey or new agey or whatever. And I always thought so. I'm a big cynic, or skeptic. I want to say cynic, but skeptic. And when I ran out of things to try, that's when I said, well, how about this? What if this actually works? What if it's not a bunch of BS, right? And this actually works. And well, it not only worked, but it was the key to sort of undo everything else, and understand what the root of all problems are and how to fix them.
Man, yeah. So you touched on a lot of stuff there. You mentioned the school system, like sort of this programming, this almost indoctrination like thing. The grades being sort of, it's almost like you're being programmed to um, exceed at a level that other people succeed at, and that's like your target. And I think it was Albert Einstein who said that everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life thinking it is stupid. And obviously
Well,
there's things that you need to learn in school. Obviously we need to learn language and that kind of stuff. But I think that the individual person is so unique that you just simply cannot have a cookie cutter way of like education for a person to excel at. That's why like a lot of creative people, like entrepreneurs, artists, those kind of people, I mean, they were C and D students in school, and if you use that philosophy of like what a person's potential might be, I mean, the creative people bring things to the world that don't exist otherwise. You were talking about like we're talking about this programming and stuff. I don't think people realize that you can be programmed by your habits. Like your habits, like it's easy to think about an outside source being programmed, or like the TV, the social media, the news, like all these things program you. And it's easy to look at that as as negative because it's an outside source. But like we program ourselves too through our habits. I think our habits is what, I don't know if you know this or not, but if you eat at a certain time of day every day, your body will get like you will get hungry at that time, whether you're like you'll get hungry. Like let me look, I have Perplexity as the AI that I use. I'm going to ask this to explain this. I have talk to text right here, so I'm going to ask this to explain. Let me see, because I want people to be aware of this. Hang on just a second. What would it be? It would be I think it would be the hang on, just trying to pick up what I'm saying. It would be the biological cues. Explain biological cues of hunger at routine times. Let's see what it says. Yeah, you can. Yeah, if you eat like at a certain time of day, then you will get hungry at that time of day. And of course, it's not
it's
working.
it's
But
okay, because I understand exactly what you're talking about, and that's the other side of programming, because you're right. It's not just this conspiracy theory that you're programmed by people outside of you, but we are creatures of habit, and philosophers have said this, scientists have said this. And for example, if somebody hands you something, you know, you have this instinct to just extend your hand and get it, and you have to be really skeptical to fight yourself to not do that, right? You sort of have to wonder, say, why is this person handing me something? Like if you're walking in downtown and there's somebody handing out flyers in the corner, your first instinct is to grab it. That is something that's programmed within you, and you don't understand it and you don't realize it. And so is eating. I mean, in a way, the animal nature of humans, and this is my thought and derived from the things that I've read, right? It's we just like to become habitual, and if you get up at 5 every morning for 2 months, eventually getting up at 5 is going to become a habit. And if you bite your nails, it's going to become a habit. And if you eat at 3 p.m., by 3 p.m. your body's going to signal that you need to eat. And that's so yes, and you re-indoctrinate yourself by repeating that pattern, right? The more you follow that pattern, you keep programming yourself to a deeper level, and you're building this root and your patterns that to which you live every day because they work, right? So then that allows you to not be so conscious about what it is that you're doing and pay more attention to other things that require your attention. In the case of most people, work.
Mhm. And so, but like the importance of this is that like whatever it is that your habits, whether they're conscious or unconscious, or whatever you do on a routine basis, like these things program you for whatever. Like so, in other words, if so this the best way I know how to explain this is like if you talk about fitness or a business, you have discipline that's involved. Well, what that basically means is that you have a system of how you're going to do things.
Right.
Because when it gets when it gets tough to do it, you don't want to do it, it's stressful, whatever. You have a system that you can refer to that says you're going to do this thing this way, regardless if you want to do it. And
That's
so,
right.
if we have a habit of like when it gets tough and we don't want to do it, not doing the thing. So I think it boils down to this, man. I think people who truly exceed and excel at things, there's a fork in the road that really divides those two people. And it is simply what they do when the next step gets difficult. Like the
Right.
people who take the easy way out, those are the people who stay average and ultimately fail, not necessarily both. But the people who, when they meet that thing and they do it anyways, they don't want to do it. It's just tough. They're disciplined, whatever. Those are the people who excel at it. And I think that's the decision. That's the fork in the road for a lot of people.
Yeah, and that's not just. I mean, that's something that's recorded in the hero's journey by Joseph Campbell. I don't know if you've read Joseph Campbell, but
I haven't.
he authored The Hero with a Thousand Faces. And Campbell was a scholar who spent a great part of his life collecting all the stories as early as humans began recording stories. And then he found this common theme between them, which is called the monomyth. And the monomyth is the hero's journey, which is what you've seen in every single hero movie. The hero who is undergifted, who's got tough parents, who lost them, or whatever childhood situation he had to face that was exigent. Then he goes into this journey where he's looking for something, and he's got to go fight all of these enemies, right? And he fights the little minions, and he gets to a higher level boss. Then he defeats that boss, and then he keeps going towards whatever it is that he's trying to achieve. Um, and eventually, you do come to that desert, it's more like a fork in the road. It's this extended period of time where you where you realize that you're so far from where you started, but you can't see the end. You don't know how close to that end you are, and it's scary, right? Because that's the allegory of the desert. You're John Wick, for example, walking in the desert, and the dude just passes out when he runs out of water, and then something beyond him picks him up and takes him to wherever he needs to go. And that happens in every single movie. I mean, kids movies, cartoons, I don't know, Naruto, Samurai Jack, it all happens. So you're right, and that's part of. I don't know if failing or succeeding, but that's definitely a an axiomatic part of getting to where you want to be. There's no other way around it. There's just no other way. And the problem is that if you don't take that path, if you don't take the hard path and you keep taking the low hanging fruit, that instills a certain level of regret in you, right? And regret, you can't heal regret, man. Regret haunts you forever. But if you try and you fail, hey, at least you did have the courage and you tried it. And chances are you're going to fail again and again and again. But but that's how you get better. I mean,
Hmm.
have you ever driven a manual transmission car?
Yeah, that was my first car.
Dude, well, how was it the first couple of days, right? It's like terrifying. If the car is in a little incline, you know you're gonna stall it. And if you have people behind you, it's terrifying. And sometimes you put, instead of going into fourth, you go into second and your engine revs to like 9,000 RPM until
You
eventually it becomes a song between you and the car. And you no longer think about the procedural steps to make it
hmm
work, but it actually just becomes a literal extension of you, right?
Yep. You know what's
That and
crazy about that is my first car was a manual, and in my high school, like going out of the school, it had a very steep incline on the hill, and then so there was a stop sign like up at the main street or whatever, and then like there would always be a line, right there getting out of school or whatever, and so I was, dude, when I got that car, like it was, I went to that hill like on a Saturday or whatever, and I forced myself to learn how to drive that thing because I didn't want to be embarrassed when I got to school. And
you would
I was
have
the
you would have
yeah,
been.
yeah,
Yeah, that's so funny. Yeah, that's funny, and that's your fork on the road, right? And so yeah, I completely agree with you. And that's where all this mindset and programming, you can name it whatever. You can call it NLP, you can call it logotherapy, whatever you want, but at the end of the day, it's just psychology, and it's which process you take to change the way that you think and then make that translate into results.
yeah. You mentioned the hero journey, the hero
Yeah.
story. And what's crazy about that is the majority of that story is a failure. Like the majority of that
Oh
story is
yeah.
like just like pain
It's
and heart. Yeah.
That's
Like
right.
I don't
That's
know
right.
if you played video games, or if you play video games, if
Yeah.
you're a big gamer. I was a big gamer in high school, man, and like
Yeah, right.
there's a I don't know. There's a mixed opinions on video games, but I think one of the best things that they do teach you is that like failure is part of the process, because when you're playing a video game, you're trying to beat the boss level or whatever. You probably have to do it several different ways before you can actually do it. You know?
Right, to get creative. That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, because if not, if you give up the game, then that's also another regret. Even it's just a video game. I mean, I didn't beat Super Mario when I was 6, and I still haven't beaten it, and it's haunting me forever. You know what I
yeah.
mean? And it's like, it's not like, oh no, I didn't beat Mario, but it's sort of like that stain in your courage report card, right? I mean, like, man,
hmm
so yeah, you're 100% right. Yeah, and it's always a failure until the hero can go anymore, right? When the hero has completely given up, and you'll see this in every single monomyth, that's when the hero sort of dies in a sense, and this force beyond him, call it, the universe, God, whatever it is that you believe in, or and that picks him up, and then and then that's when his life transforms, and most of them either get the princess or get the love of their lives, and they finally defeat the big evil guy by a hair, and
hmm
then everyone benefits from it, right? The guy slays the dragon, and then everyone reaps the benefits of the treasure. Or Batman takes the bomb away from the city, and then everyone lives happily without Bane. It's sort of like the same thing, but it's all a
Yeah.
failure up until that point. That's right. And life is a
Well,
failure up until that point. You know what I mean? Like, you're always failing.
I think we can really change how we see failure. I think we can change what it means to us. And I think when we do that, I think that is at the core of building resilience. Like when you
And we
change,
should, dude,
yeah.
and we should. And that's the problem with school. Like you said, yeah, it teaches you things that you need to know, because I ponder this a very long time, and many, many, many hours to see what the benefit is. And well, first of all, I don't have the time or ability to teach my kids math, ELA, art, uh, um, exercising. I don't have that. I don't have the ability. I don't have the skills, right? I don't have the knowledge. So that's the benefit. But the part that I disagree with is this indoctrination into mindless obedience and mindless fear of somebody who's apparently above you, right? Like your teacher. I always perceived my teacher as an authority above me.
Mhm.
And if you reframe that, well, a teacher is really just your employee, if you really think about it, because without students, they wouldn't have a job, right? So but without the teachers, students wouldn't learn. So it's like it's a horizontal relationship.
Mhm.
But they teach them to fear. They teach them to shoot for what they don't know, right? Like, kids are always forced to get 100. But how do you know that's 100, right? Like everybody has different learning methods, different skills. My son is a freaking genius at math, but when it comes to reading the room, for example, he's not as skilled, right? Emotional
Right.
development is not really that good. And my daughter is an amazing artist, but then at math, she struggles a little bit. So how can you measure everyone the same? And that's where I think failure becomes this stigma because parents are quick to jump on board to force their kids to have good grades because otherwise it means failure, right? If you get anything less than an A, it means that you are not good enough.
Well, it
And
also looks good on the parents, and a lot of them
oh
want
yeah,
to
oh
live
yeah,
vicariously through that. Yeah.
but the parents never took the time to actually ask why or understand, because they know they've been uncomfortable their whole life because they don't want to kiss ass at work because a lot of people, a lot of adults feel that they're not good enough or that they're not doing a good enough job or they're fear for their job because they're going to be outperformed. But that's such an abstract concept, and they're fearful of failing, but failing is really just the only way forward. There's no way around it. No way. And that's something I've tried to teach my kids is it's that when they bring me less than 100, that it's a reason to celebrate because it means that not only they gave their best, but there's also things for them to learn.
Mm.
And that my daughter in art, for example, she used to get frustrated that she wasn't good enough in art drawing. And I said, well, dude, how can you be good enough? These people have been practicing for 30 years and they programmed that into their minds to the point that now they just do it automatically. So 2 years later, my daughter is drawing full blown comic books, and my son is producing music and coding games, and now he's using Da Vinci to edit. He's 9 years old, and the kid, is doing all this cool thing, and that's because I helped him lose the fear of failure and actually embrace it as something completely necessary to get better. Otherwise, how else are you going to learn? There's infinity of things you can learn.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point, man, because like I said, you're talking about the Albert Einstein quote, like everybody is not on the same sort of path, and they don't have the same talents or abilities. And if you're
That's
using the
right.
same system to sort of judge everybody, I mean, I've said for a while, and I'll continue to say that the education system is simply not set. The modern education system in public school in America is not set up for entrepreneurs, creative people, artists. Like it's not. And the bad part
In
is
fact,
if
it's the
you're,
opposite. It boxes them.
yeah, yeah. And if you're in that spot, so, you're a teenager or whatever, there's already a lot of things going on. That's already a weird time, and then you got this system that's telling you basically if you don't go to college or if you don't fit inside this box, that you're going to be quote unquote a failure and not do anything with your life. But it's like, I don't know how it was when you were in high school, but like with me, there was very little talk about the trades. There was almost no talk about like starting businesses or anything like that, starting companies. It was always university, university, university. And that's not for everybody. We definitely need those people. And if that's what you want to do, we need that. But that's not for everybody.
Yeah, and I think yeah, that's right. It's flawed at a mindset level, but it's not flawed. In fact, the educational system is perfect in the sense that it's designed to produce little soldiers, right? It's designed to produce the bottom of the pyramid because there's a hierarchical structure and everything, including nature, to the way that a country runs, right? Um, and so it's meant to produce these mindless people who are just pursuing the low hanging fruit because there's no fruit anywhere else to be found. And if you don't follow this path, well, you're going to starve to death. And that's why the creatives, the entrepreneurs, the artists, they're outcasts, and they're always outcasts. Whether you try to blend in or not, you're always an outcast, and you always feel like an outcast, right? Because you just don't fit in, and you have this rebellious attitude coded in your DNA because you don't agree with these things. Like I knew something was wrong in church when I was 6 years old, and that pushed me to do all of my research when it came to religion and coming to my own beliefs and building my own set of beliefs or what I believe in and what I don't believe in because I always felt that it was wrong for someone to tell me what to believe, right? And they're telling me all these things, but then in the action they're doing the opposite, so it's contradictory. So I agree. In college it's like a funnel, right? Like you're born without any programming per se, and if you let that child just grow wild, he's just gonna be like a little Tarzan. He's gonna go outside. Maybe he'll find his vocation. Maybe he likes working with wood. Maybe he likes music, right? But he'll find that naturally. But in school, they start boxing them in, and sure, they give them good skills. But then you go into college, and then they strip you from all of that unless you go to college to be a creative or to study art. But I don't know how that works because I didn't go to college. um, I think that that also boxes you in. And it's funny that yesterday I was reading, I think 73% of people are working on fields not related to the degree they acquired. Yet they left their 20s with a big ass debt. And that's a sort of debt that you can't wipe out because I don't think even bankruptcy wipes out school loans. And I know doctors that they can stop being doctors even though they hate it because they can buy themselves out of the loans that they own, right? And so it's kind of, but it again, I'm not going against college. I'm just agreeing with you that the educational system is not designed for the outcasts, for the creatives, for the artists. It's just not. It's designed for the rest.
Yeah, that's man, I don't know. Like I feel like first of all, I don't feel like whatever's going on in college, like the big colleges these days, I feel like very like 50% of it is education because there's so much political
Yeah.
ideology that's being promoted in college right now, especially the American colleges. Like it's almost like if you think about any of these political stances, any of these political movements, they almost always happen at colleges or universities. And it's like, okay, is the purpose that you're there to become part of a political party, or is it to become educated so that you can do a job after you get out of college? Like, what's because it seems like the purpose might be to promote some sort of political ideology or whatever. Because it's like they always, I don't want to use the word Marxism or Marxist or whatever it is, but there's a lot of talk about that in the like some of the big universities. And it's just like what that doesn't make sense to me because that's clearly something. If that's the case, there's clearly something bigger there that is much worse than what we're talking about right here.
Right. That's right. Yeah, perhaps it's part of their curriculum. Perhaps it's by design that is planted in there. Because I think when I did research and I try to figure out how many hours of college you need to become a psychologist, right, to get a degree in psychology, it was a very small number of hours. And then when you really think about that, you're like, well, and all of those hours are not spent in the specifics of psychology. You're learning a bunch of other things that perhaps don't translate or you don't need, and they're just almost like fillers, right? And
Mhm.
and if you chose psychology as your field, for example, you can read your ass off because after all, when you go to school, where do they get their information from? From books, right? You got to get a book, and then you have somebody who's telling you how to interpret or how to read the book and how it's going to translate in your life potentially. And they're promising you a step-by-step program that by the time you graduate or complete it, you're supposed to be achieving certain goals. So it's like the longest and most expensive self improvement program ever, right? Like it's like,
Yeah.
and and at the end of the day, you actually don't have all of those skills. If you read 20 psychology books from different schools of thought, you can have a deep conversation with pretty much anyone who graduated from college and being a psychologist. And sometimes, I mean, I've had times where I have friends that are psychologists, and they just they didn't even know what I was talking about until they actually read it. And I was like, wow, I can't believe this, right? So somebody recently was blown away by the concept of logotherapy, which is something that Victor Marco Frankl invented or named after he survived the Nazi prison camps. And my friend had never heard of logotherapy until I showed it to them, and it's a certified way of therapy. And he's like, wow, this would have been extremely helpful in my practice if I had known about this approach. So yeah, who knows what college, but also college is, in my opinion and perception, it's it's losing its value. People are
Mm.
beginning to realize that the generation that was forced to go to college are not really reaping the rewards, and they're carrying a heavy cross when it comes to the responsibility they assumed. So maybe that's why all of these self-taught programs and certifications are popular now, right? Because you can choose what to specialize in and then sort of ditch the rest.
You mentioned books, and I think this is a good transition to this. You said you're a writer. What are your books about?
My first book it's titled No Grail Without Dragons, and that book. So by the time I was 35, I had lived in many places around the world, and I've had many different jobs, from factory janitor to having my own business and whatnot. But I also had dated a lot and gotten divorced twice. So by 35, I was pretty beaten, right? I was pretty seasoned. And when it came to what many call the darkest night, and within a couple of months, my ex told me she wanted to get divorced, which is something that I hadn't expected, and it was a battle that lasted years. Then I became a single dad. My kids showed up on my doorstep, and that's when I became a full-time dad without any prior experience, because before that, I only saw them after work, right? I was a breadwinner, so I worked all day, and I only saw them for a few hours, but I really had no idea what being an actual full-time parent entailed. And I also lost my job all within a couple of months. So my life sort of flipped upside down. And in the process of going through this hell, one thing that you always think about when you're suffering a lot is if life is even worth it to live this way. And in my case, the answer was really uh, tilting to the no side, because I had survived a rough childhood, which is something you don't really get to choose. Moved around the world, so I lost my friends, my family, my belongings. I sort of had no place of belonging, and then I failed in marriage twice, which is a big deal. So by about a year of after getting the divorce and going through this, I was in a really dark place, very, very dark place. I didn't believe in God. I didn't believe in anything. I said, man, if there's a God, then why would I be going through this? Because I've always done my best. So when I really considered taking my life for real, I I had to sit down, and I had an experience that I can't explain until now. That's also one of the reasons why I obsessively delved into mythology and stories and books from different schools of thought, and also Eastern philosophy, uh, to sort of either try to accept this experience that I had, or understand it, or explain it. But in that moment, I realized I sort of had an epiphany, and I realized that even though what I thought will happen if I took my life, which is my kids will get $1 million from, I don't remember if it was 500,000 or $1 million from a life insurance policy, which turns out if you do it, they actually get no money. Um, that money wouldn't have spared them the sufferings of life. And right there and then, I knew that I had to write a book about all the many experiences and realizations that helped me break free from the pain and the regret and the things that I was doing wrong, unconsciously, that led to the results that I didn't want. And I thought that would be a lot more valuable, because that will give them a roadmap of the vast places that I've been, both emotionally, mentally, and physically, and they wouldn't have to start from zero. So my first book, it's sort of a collection of those little epiphanies. So there's 33 chapters, but they're short, about 1,000 words or so each. It was my first time writing too. And I refuse to read it, because I'm always, now that I've been writing for a few years, I don't even want to look at it. So I feel self-conscious about it.
Yeah.
But that's what the book is. It's mostly this epiphanies through personal experience, and then connecting it with science that helped me change my life. And so I will say self-help, maybe prescriptive psychology slash memoir. That's my first book. And my second book, which I'm finishing now, it's about the role of the subconscious in our patterns and our trauma, how that plays out into our relationships, and how we can become the type of man that women want to have around, right? Because I've had a lot of money, and women still dumped me. And I had been ripped and super handsome, and women still dumped me. And I had this big list of achievements, and women still dumped me. So I realized that it was about something else. And eventually, it turned out that, well, yeah, it's about who you are behind closed doors, and how she feels around you, and how you sort of program her through your behavior and conscious behavior and whatnot. And that's what the book is. It's called 12 Rules of Marriage: How to Become the Man Your Wife Wants to Keep.
Hmm. I can't believe there's only 12 rules for that.
Well, no, these are like the big ones. If you want to
Okay.
get in the nitty gritty, I
Yeah.
think
No, I got you. Yeah, I would think like 1,200, 12,000 maybe,
Yeah, we gotta
Um,
start somewhere.
yeah, yeah, no, you got to start somewhere. So of those rules, like, what do you think? Do you have a favorite? Do you have one that you think is more important than the rest?
Yes, yes, I do, and that is the first rule, and it's to become self-aware. I
Hmm.
think I think self-awareness is the key to changing. Once you actually man up and you sort of wonder, you ask yourself, how am I causing the results that I want to avoid?
Hmm.
Without, because many take it as taking blame or guilt or feeling less than. But when you take it with an objective approach and say, well, how could I possibly be contributing to the things that I'm looking to avoid? Arguments, going to bed angry, my wife not being passionate with me, whatever. uh, that is the first rule. That's the first rule, is to just be willing to be self-aware. And from then on, that's why the book opens on that, because there's no change if you don't accept that you want to change. Not that you need to change, but that you want to change, because you're not reaping the results that you're wanting to. And being married is no easy feat, man. Whether you're in love with each other, or you're comfortably painful in a painful relationship, it's work every day. So why not make it your best? But that's the first rule, to be self-aware, and to accept self-awareness as the gate through which you're going to change.
Well, I think that's a good one because yeah, I think that's like I think self awareness, whatever degree you have it or don't have it, is like a bottleneck on what's really possible for you in a relationship, a business setting, a friendship. Like I think self awareness is probably one of the most important things we can have as people,
That's
especially
right.
men.
I completely agree. Yeah, we're hard-headed, and uh, we are similar to women in the way that cats are similar to dogs, right? We have similar symmetry and fur and whatnot, but really at a deeper level, we don't really operate the same, and we are not as emotionally developed as I mean, we are not emotionally developed, right? Just we're strong, and we try to stand out and be picked by a woman by being the strongest and the coolest and whatever it is that you think is being the top dog. um, and so many really sort of disregard the side of emotional development, understanding, empathy, and yeah, I completely agree.
I think you know what I think self awareness really leads into like we're talking about discipline. We were talking about discipline earlier. We were talking about like your sort of your potential. There's a lot of talk, and you mentioned this that you had the money, you had the body, all that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of talk on like what women might see as valuable in a man, and I guess that's relative to the woman, specific to the woman. But I think in general, I think that one thing that really makes you stick out as a man is self control, self discipline, self awareness. Because man, if you want to be a 1% person or a very low percent person, a lot of people don't have that.
No.
And it's like you can have the money, and I understand the financial part of it because a lot of people you can't really build financial wealth without self control, without discipline. But building wealth and having a job where you make a lot of money are two different things. But I think that a lot of like what opens the door to a lot of these other things is the self discipline, the self control, the self awareness. I think that's very big part, very big start at least.
Yeah, and if you sort of spend enough time questioning the reasons behind everything, um, what I believe, and it's not just about marriage, but let's just focus it on marriage. I believe that what a woman wants is to feel a certain way, and a person who pursues great achievements pursues them because they're pursuing that that pinnacle of how they're going to feel when they achieve such thing, right? Or how they think they're going to feel. And I know people that are in relationships where the husband makes a lot of money and she's alone the whole week, and he's gone working, and he comes and sees the family on the weekends, and this woman is in an existential vacuum because she has the nicest house in the neighborhood, and she has the coolest car, and they go skiing, and they do everything that somebody with that you will imagine has excess money will do. But she's empty inside, and she's hurting, and she's has this existential issue that she wants to move back to her original country. And you're like, wow. So you will think that you have it all figured out, but then even at that point there's something else that you're seeking, right? And you still feel void inside. And same thing goes for physical attractiveness. I mean, that's something that you sort of learn throughout your 20s when your physical appearance is important, and it's important. I'm not saying it's not, but that becomes sort of like your focus. You think that if you're the most ripped guy out there, that women are going to be head over heels for you, and you're then right. They're going to be initially. But once they get to know you, like once they get to see that you don't shower every day, and that every time she brings to you a concern, you will snap and become aggressive, and you're insecure and you're jealous, right? Your physical appearance doesn't matter, and your money doesn't matter, because that instills in your partner this emotional cage that they were looking to escape by being with you, right? They were looking to escape the loneliness and fulfill that need of being with someone. But eventually, that's not as bad as being with you, because they feel this other array of negative things. And if you really want to have a relationship that works, just like a business, relationships are a business. You
Mm.
are the store where your partner goes and gets her emotional needs fulfilled. And if you want to be a successful business owner, then you have to have in stock. You pick your field, but then you have to have everything your customers want in stock. Because if you sell tools, and that's why you got your first loyal customer, and then they start coming, and then they're coming to get a wrench, and you're selling a bagel, and be like, wait a minute, I'm not finding what I need here, and eventually your business is going to fail. And so a
Mhm.
relationship is the same, but you sort of have to wrestle with your ego about that. You have to be willing to give up those things, and give up those patterns and those beliefs and those things that hold you prisoner, so that the woman or your partner can feel that they want to be with you. Like, you want to be the kind of guy that people want to be around, right? And again, all goes back to self-awareness, and I think that that's sort of the bottom line for a successful relationship, at least on the men's side, right? That's 50-50. But as a guy looking to take responsibility for who you are, and become the sort of man that a woman wants next to them their whole life, right? That they miss you when you're there, and if another guy comes by, they like their image is gonna disappear, because they know the kind of man that they have at home. Then that's what you have to focus on.
So we probably don't have time to go through all the rules, but is there a rule that talks about communication?
100%.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I touch on communication. I touch on infidelity. I touch on porn in an indirect way, but mostly like fantasizing, and how that affects you at a neurological level, and sort of the ripples of that in your life. I talk about commitment, trust. So sort of the real pillars of building a relationship. I'll say like the 80-20 rule, right? The 20% that are responsible for 80% of your results, and then the rest is fine tuning or whatever. But that should cover most guys, and help them realize what really is important. And I learned that, unfortunately, through many relationships around the world. So it turns out that it doesn't matter what country your woman is from, they all have similar patterns. And then 2 divorces by 35, which is no joke. I don't know if you've ever lost anything, but there's always that process of you becoming aware of all the things that you could have done better, or the things that seem like a big deal and they were not, right? And then you're finding yourself in this hell, and this emotional hell. Well, that's the sort of insights that the book has.
Mm.
I've really poured a lot of that into there, because I really hope nobody goes through divorce. Divorce sucks. So, and it's the worst thing. I've been beaten, I've been fired, you name it, I've gone through it. But divorce is really a bad one.
Well, and I've never experienced divorce, so I'm kind of outside of my lane here. But we were talking about earlier about failure, and you can't really improve until you have that failure. And I just feel like if I were to be in that situation, that is probably how I would look at it. Like, yeah, this sucks. Maybe it's what I wanted. Maybe it's what I didn't want. Whatever. But how can I improve from that situation? And I think that's what you did with the book. I think you sort of took that route with the book. Like, how can you improve from that experience, and
Yeah,
help other
right.
people improve?
Yeah, right. It's like sort of like, hey man, I've been through this jungle, and I hacked my way through it, because it was vegetation when I came in, and
Hmm.
this is what I found. Don't take this path, or if you take this path, be aware of this animal that's gonna eat you or whatever. Just trying to help people avoid the mistakes. I mean, why go through them when somebody else has gone through them? And at least that's how we grow, right? Like, you learn your business from people who have failed, and they go, oh, hey, listen, try this, and you realize that what they tell you improves your business dramatically. So
Mhm.
that's what I'm aiming with the book. It's like, hey, listen, these are really big mistakes that a lot of people either don't talk about, or they don't talk about from a first person point of view, connecting it with the scientific, right? Because it's both my experience, what I lost, when I realized that I had to change, how I changed it, and which actual tools I use. It's not just my opinion, right? I said, well, I use NLP for this, I use logotherapy for this, I use Adler psychology for this. I found answers from Freud and or Jordan Peterson. So that's what it is. Yeah.
You know what's crazy, man, is like what we're talking about here, sort of you using your experience to maybe help others in that space. I've talked to people in different spaces about this. Pastors, I talked to Austin, who is a Freemason, the other day on the podcast, and we were talking about this. Like one of the missions of the Freemasonry is to help men, become better men, basically in certain situations. And I think that when we're in this, we what I was getting to is all these conversations we sort of led to the same thing, which is like one of the big purpose we have as a man is to help other men in similar situations become better men that maybe we were in one day, or help that guidance. Because I mean, a lot of us don't really have that masculine guidance when we're kids, when we're children. And I think that that's one of the best things we can do as men, is to help other people who are in that space. And I think that's why I said I think you're doing that with your book, and I appreciate that.
Thanks, man. I appreciate the words, and it hits home. So yeah, that's right. I mean, if we didn't try to help each other through our mistakes, we will still, we'll still be getting eaten by animals, right? Because nobody would
Right.
have told anyone that this animal is dangerous, or don't do this or don't do that, right? So yeah, and I think at this day and age, there's a lot of confusion about what being a man really is, right?
Hmm.
That's something I touch on the book, toxic masculinity. Um, so
What do you define? How do you define that? How do you define being like a man, a good man? What does that mean to you?
man, that's a broad, but I think being a man is it's a group of things, but mostly out, maybe going back to Stoic philosophy, just holding temperance, justice, um, self-control as the pillars, and just being strong, being knowing that you're there to serve other people, being knowing that you're there to improve things, to leave things better than you found them, and just to sort of face the battles of life with a smile on, while you're a tough dude that's capable of really awful things, but you choose to be gentle, right? You choose to be a
Mm.
gentleman, and use the strength that you've been given, both emotionally and physically, to actually improve things, and not use them against other people or to compete with other people. But it's really just such a broad question, that I don't have a one sentence for it.
Well, but I think that's a good point, though, and it kind of goes back to the first point of the book, which is self-awareness. Because I don't think everything that you just mentioned, you can't really be that guy or be in that spot until you have that self-awareness about yourself. Like, and I think a lot of times, we want to think that whether it's anger or it's something like this, it's jealousy or whatever, we have those negative thoughts or negative emotions, and we just want to shove them away and push them down. But it's like, you need to be aware of that. You need to be aware that that thing bothers you. It makes you angry, whatever. Because if you're aware of it, I don't want to say battle with it. You can then not let it get the best of you, and not let it, you don't react in the moment or whatever. But to just pretend like it doesn't exist, that's not being self-aware.
Yeah, and that's a basic level of self-awareness, because I think everyone knows what they don't like, right? And sometimes they know that being angry doesn't lead to places you want to go, but the part is to be aware that you need to change, right? To
Mm.
embrace that self-awareness as a point of changing, and how you contribute to your own demise in a way.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, so I do need to close here in a couple minutes, but do you have a social media website or anything?
Yes, you can check out my full name, Victor Giusfredi, .com. So that's VictorGiusfredi, .com, or No Grill Without Dragons.com, which is the name of my book. And I'm not really active on social media a lot, because I'm a full-time dad. I'm writing a new book and doing interviews, so I'm sort of really focused on the art. But you can find me around. I have a YouTube channel that only have a couple of videos, uh, and Instagram. Yeah, that's about it.
Okay, okay. And the books, are the books on Amazon? I know you said one hasn't released yet. or
Yeah,
you're
no,
still
no
kind of
grow
working on
without.
it?
Yeah, no grow without dragons is on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and any major book retailer. And the new book, it's coming up. I don't have a release date yet, but I'm thinking somewhere around August. So people can go to my website and sign up for the newsletter, and I'll definitely announce a pre-order there. Probably do a special edition with it signed and maybe some art in there that is not gonna the regular edition is not gonna have. But just head out to my website, and that's where I
Okay.
post my info.
Okay. All right. Perfect. So one last thing, and this is something I ask everybody. This could be something from your personal life, if you're comfortable sharing it, or your career, your business. What do you think is one of the most valuable lessons you've ever learned?
The most valuable lesson I have ever learned is that the golden rule, it's not a responsibility, but a life hack.
Hmm. Yeah. I like that.
Once you embrace that we live to serve others and to give to others what we want to get, that's exactly how you get it. That's exactly how you prosper, how you feel fulfilled, how you contribute, but as long as you're in it for yourself, you're always gonna be in the same trap. But when you understand the golden rule is golden for a reason, then that was a major breakthrough for me.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think a life hack. I've never heard that referred to that way, but I think a life hack is right because yeah. I think it's like a hack. I don't know how else to say it. Now that you said it that way, I can't refer to it another way.
It's a hack. It's a hack. I couldn't believe it when I realized it. I always thought that self-preservation was my number one thing, especially living around the world in dangerous cities. And when I had nothing else to try, and that's what I tried, and it just blew my mind. I was like, wow, this is not an actual burden; it's a freaking life hack. This if you take this hack, it's like life is just so much better after it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, man, I appreciate your time here. It's been nice talking to you. Appreciate the insight, and appreciate you sharing these things. If you can hang out for just a second, I'll explain the upload to you. But I do appreciate your time and insight here today.
Likewise, it's such a pleasure, Cody. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we're uploaded.
No wonder, man. Awesome question.
Hey everybody, listen, I really appreciate you guys tuning in today, man. If you like the content, if you found this episode useful, you can visit us on social media. That's YouTube, TikTok, Spotify, Amazon Music, Rumble, Instagram, Facebook, and Google and Apple Podcasts. There you can like our videos, follow, subscribe, and share. And again, we appreciate it. We'll see you next time.